I am Jacob Matthews, a 35-year-old man living a simple and repetitive life in a peaceful suburban town. My work is as a construction worker, helping to build structures that symbolize hard work, tradition, and faith. However, faith has always been something foreign to me. Even though I was raised in a strict Christian household, I never truly understood or believed in what the church taught. My father, John Matthews, is a devout believer who always tried to draw me closer to God. But from a young age, I witnessed the promises of the church not being fulfilled in my own life or in the lives of those around me. To me, God, heaven, and salvation seemed like distant, unrealistic concepts. Everything changed the day I died. It wasn't a dramatic death. I wasn't fighting for my life in a violent accident or caught in a harrowing situation. No, it was just an ordinary day. I was driving home from work when the rain had made the pavement slick. I remember my car skidding uncontrollably, and in the blink of an eye, everything went dark. I heard the sickening sound of metal twisting and breaking, but after that, nothing. I was gone. I don't remember much after that. What I do recall is a profound sense of silence, absolute, unbroken silence. No sound, no movement, no sensation of time passing, just pure, undisturbed stillness. Then, something extraordinary happened. I could feel it. The air around me shifted, heavy with a presence I couldn't explain. Yet it was unmistakable. I didn't see anyone, but I knew, deep down, that I wasn't alone. It was a sensation of being surrounded by something vast, something far beyond my understanding. It wasn't a voice, not like anything I had ever heard. It was a deep knowing, a communication that bypassed words. I remember the moment when the light appeared. It wasn't blinding, yet it filled everything. It surrounded me, radiated warmth, but it didn't overwhelm. At the center of that light, I saw him. I don't know how to describe it. I couldn't see his form clearly, but I knew exactly who he was. God, the one I had heard about all my life but never truly understood. He didn't speak with words, yet I knew he knew everything about me. Every thought, every action, every lie I had ever told, every mistake I had made. In that moment, I was struck by a deep sense of shame. I was overwhelmed by everything I had done wrong, by the weight of all my failures. But alongside that shame, there was something else, an overwhelming love. It wasn't just any love. It was unconditional, boundless, a love I had never known, a love that made me feel known in a way I had never felt before. Without words, he spoke to me. It wasn't in a voice that I heard with my ears, but it was as clear as if it were. "You've been deceived, Jacob," he said. I didn't hear it with sound, but the truth hit me like a weight. The church has not told you the truth about me. The truth is far greater than anything you have ever known. I wanted to argue. I wanted to deny it. I had spent my entire life believing one version of God, one version of faith, and in that moment, everything I thought I knew about him felt wrong, twisted, but I couldn't. I couldn't deny what I was feeling. I couldn't argue with what was being shown to me. The fear I felt wasn't from God. No, it was the fear of being so wrong, of having lived my life under a false understanding of God, of salvation. I tried to resist, tried to pull away, but his presence was undeniable. It wasn't forceful, but it held me there, like a pull that I couldn't escape. I couldn't understand it, but I knew it was the truth, and the truth was bigger than I ever imagined. Then, just as suddenly as it all began, I was back. I don't know how much time passed, but I woke up in the hospital, disoriented, confused, and trying to process everything that had just happened. I knew, deep down, that something had shifted. I wasn't the same. I wasn't the same person who had gotten into that car, and I couldn't pretend that everything was as it had been before. When I woke up in the hospital, I wasn't sure how to even begin to explain what I had experienced. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. They couldn't explain how I survived the crash or how I came out with almost no injuries. But I didn't feel lucky. I felt different, changed. It was as if my eyes had been opened to something I couldn't ignore, something I had to confront. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know how to process it. But from that moment on, I knew my life could never be the same. When I returned home, I found myself consumed by the need to explain what had happened to me. I wanted to share the profound encounter I had with God, to somehow make my family and friends understand the transformation I had experienced. But no matter how hard I tried, no one seemed to grasp the depth of it. Instead, it felt as though the more I spoke, the more I was drifting away from the people I loved. My father, who had been so relieved and overjoyed that I survived the accident, could not accept my refusal to return to church. For him, it felt like a rejection, a betrayal of the faith that had shaped his life and his understanding of God. He saw my refusal as a personal loss. "God gave you a second chance," he would say, his voice filled with a mixture of sorrow and frustration. "You need to come back to church, to thank him for sparing your life." But the truth that I had encountered was so different from the picture of God that my father held on to. The God I met in my near-death experience was not bound by the walls of a church or by the rituals and rules that had been passed down through generations. His love was not conditional upon my actions, my ability to follow certain rules, or my attendance at a service. His love was unconditional, boundless, and all-encompassing. It was a love that made me feel seen and accepted for who I truly was, without judgment. It wasn't a love that demanded perfection. It was a love that was given freely. But when I tried to explain this to my father, he didn't understand. To him, the church was the place where salvation was found. He couldn't see beyond the rituals and the traditions that had been ingrained in him. To him, faith was about duty and adherence to a prescribed set of beliefs. And no matter how hard I tried to explain the depth of what I had felt, he couldn't see it. It was like I was speaking a language he couldn't understand. My refusal to go back to church wasn't just an act of disobedience to him. It felt like a denial of everything he had ever known. That realization stung. It felt like I was being rejected, not just for my actions, but for the person I had become. Then there was Ethan, my best friend. Ethan had always been the one person who truly understood me. We had spent countless hours together, sharing our dreams, our doubts, and our frustrations. We had laughed, argued, and stood by each other through thick and thin. But when I tried to explain to him what had happened to me, he couldn't grasp it. I told him about my experience, about the profound truth I had encountered, but his reaction was not what I expected. He sat there in silence for a long time, processing what I was saying, and then he spoke. "If you think this is the truth," he said slowly, his voice heavy with disbelief, "then I don't know who you are anymore." His words hit me like a punch in the stomach. It was as if the foundation of our friendship had been ripped away. leaving nothing but a deep chasm between us. I had tried to explain, tried to show him that what I had experienced was real, but he couldn't see it. He couldn't understand why I was changing. And the more I tried to explain, the more I saw the distance between us growing. It wasn't just that he didn't agree with me, it was that he couldn't accept me for who I had become. The doubts and the skepticism that had once brought us closer now seemed to pull us further apart. I felt like I was losing him, and it was a loss that cut deeper than I could have ever anticipated. Every conversation with Ethan became a reminder of the growing divide between us. I wasn't just losing my old self, I was losing him. The friend I had once known seemed like a stranger now. The person I had laughed with, shared my thoughts and frustrations with, was slipping away. And what made it harder was that I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to make him understand. I wasn't asking him to believe what I believed, but I wanted him to see that this was real for me, that the truth I had encountered was life-changing and undeniable. But the more I spoke, the more it seemed like he was retreating further into his own beliefs. And then there was the pain of the rejection from my family. My father's lectures became more frequent, each one heavier with disappointment. He would say things like, "You need to come back to the faith." But the words felt hollow. They didn't acknowledge the truth I had discovered. Every conversation left me feeling more isolated, like I was a stranger in my own home. My mother, though she never said much, carried a sadness in her eyes. It was as though she was grieving not just for what I had rejected, but for the son she had hoped I would be. The more I tried to share my experience, the more I felt myself slipping away from the people I cared about. The walls between us grew higher with every conversation. It wasn't just about religion anymore. It was about my entire identity. I wasn't the person they had known. I wasn't the son my father had raised. And I wasn't the friend Ethan had shared his life with. I was becoming someone else, someone they couldn't recognize. And that scared them. It scared me too. The emotional strain was unbearable. I wanted to go back to the way things were, to find a way to make everyone understand, to make the pain stop. But I couldn't. I couldn't ignore what I had felt, what I had learned, and the truth that had been revealed to me. Even though it was costing me my relationships, I couldn't deny it. The journey I had begun was leading me to something greater, but it was also pushing me away from the people I loved. Every day was a battle, not just with my beliefs, but with the fear of losing everything I had once known. But I knew, deep down, that I couldn't turn back. What I had found was too real, too powerful, and no matter how hard it was to face the rejection, I had to keep moving forward, even if it meant walking this path alone. One night, a sharp knock echoed through the quiet of my home. It was an insistent sound, like something urgent was demanding my attention. I opened the door, and standing there was a man I had never seen before. His presence was striking, tall, with dark, piercing eyes that seemed to look straight through me, as if he could see into the depths of my soul. There was something about him, an energy that I couldn't quite place. It was calm, yet powerful, unsettling yet familiar, like a force that had been waiting for this very moment. Without saying a word, he simply stood there, watching me. I felt a wave of unease wash over me, but I also felt strangely compelled to stay. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, betraying my growing discomfort. The man stepped forward, his gaze never leaving mine. "You've been searching for the truth, Jacob," he said, his voice deep, smooth, and unwavering. and the truth has been searching for you too." His words struck me like a thunderclap, reverberating in the silence of the night. I stood frozen in place, my mind racing to process what he had said. Who was this man? Why did he know so much about me? It felt like the universe itself had somehow conspired to bring him to my doorstep, like this moment had been planned long before I even understood what was happening. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling as the weight of his words hung in the air. "I am a messenger," he replied calmly, his eyes fixed on mine, "and I have come to help you understand what you're truly seeking." The air in the room shifted as he spoke, and before I could respond, the door slammed shut behind me, as if by an invisible force. The atmosphere around me grew colder, heavier, as if I had been transported to another realm, one where time didn't exist and space was filled with a quiet power I couldn't comprehend. It was as if I had stepped outside of my own reality. There was no fear, but an undeniable pull that made me feel like I had to stay, like I was being guided towards something greater than myself. The man didn't stay long. He left as suddenly as he had arrived, vanishing into the night without a trace. But the words he spoke, that simple, profound declaration that the truth has been searching for you too, echoed through my mind long after he had gone. They lingered in the silence, like a song stuck in my head that I couldn't shake off. That night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts raced as I tried to make sense of the encounter. It felt unreal, like something out of a dream. But the more I thought about it, the more it felt like a sign, like the beginning of something far bigger than I could understand. I had always searched for answers, for something that made sense of the chaos in my life, but I had never expected this. In the days that followed, I found myself drifting into vivid, surreal dreams. Each one felt more real than the last, like I was stepping into another world. In these dreams, I felt God's presence surrounding me, His love overwhelming and all-encompassing. It wasn't just a feeling, it was a knowing, a deep sense of connection that transcended everything I had ever known. I felt peace, an unshakable peace that I couldn't describe with words, as though I was being shown something vast and beautiful beyond my comprehension. But the more I experienced this divine presence, the more I felt the distance growing between myself and the people around me. Every moment I spent in the light of this truth seemed to push me further away from the life I had known. I wanted to share what I was experiencing, to explain it to my father, to Ethan, to anyone who would listen. But how could I put into words something so deep, so profound, that I barely understood myself? The more I tried to explain, the more I realized how impossible it was to make them see what I had seen. The mysterious messenger's words, "The truth has been searching for you too," haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something greater was at work, something that was guiding me toward a purpose I hadn't yet fully grasped. And yet, the more I embraced this journey, the more I felt the weight of the isolation that came with it. I was walking a path that no one seemed to understand, and every step I took seemed to lead me further from the people I loved. The truth that I was discovering was real, but it came with a cost that seemed to be taking me further from everything I had ever known. I couldn't help but wonder, was I meant to walk this path alone? Would the people I cared about ever understand what I had discovered? Or was I destined to face this journey in solitude? The dreams, the visions, the undeniable presence of God, it all felt so real, but no one around me could see it. The more I tried to explain, the more I felt like I was losing everything that once felt secure and familiar. But deep down, I knew there was no turning back. I had found something too real to ignore, something that had changed me in ways I could not explain. The journey had begun, and I had to follow it, no matter where it led. Even if it meant walking away from the people I loved, even if it meant facing the unknown alone, I knew I had to embrace this truth. The conflict with my father came to a head one evening when he made his ultimatum clear. "If you don't go back to church, we can no longer support you," he said, his voice firm, but tinged with hurt. There was no room for negotiation, no space for understanding. His words hung in the air, sharp and final. I looked over at my mother, hoping for some sign of empathy, but she sat there in silence, her face a mask of sorrow and helplessness. She didn't speak, but her gaze told me everything I needed to know. In that moment, I felt a cold, undeniable truth settle in my heart. I had been cut off, not just from my father, but from everything I had ever known. The sting of my father's words reverberated through me. "I choose God over everything else, even you." I could still hear his voice in my mind, and with it, the weight of his decision. The man who had raised me, who had always been my guide and protector, was now declaring that my choice to follow a different path was something he could not accept. It wasn't just a rejection of my decision. It felt like a rejection of me as a person. His words, meant to be final, felt like the closing of a door that had once been open, a door I had walked through my whole life. I knew, deep down, that I couldn't go back. I couldn't return to the life I had left behind, even if it meant losing my family. The truth I had encountered, the truth about God, about love, and about the way he had shown himself to me, was too real, too profound to ignore. It wasn't something that could be explained away with rituals or rules. It wasn't confined to the walls of a church, to a set of beliefs handed down through generations. No, the God I had met was present in every moment, in the very breath I took, and he had revealed a love that was unconditional and beyond comprehension. But the cost of holding on to that truth was steep. It meant walking away from the life I had known, from the traditions that had shaped my world, and from the love and approval of the people I had always turned to. My father's words stung, yes, but they also solidified something deep within me. I couldn't go back. I had found something more powerful than I ever thought possible, and to hold on to it meant I had to let go of everything else. The pain of that loss was overwhelming at times. To feel my father's rejection, to see the silent disappointment in my mother's eyes, was a burden I wasn't sure I could bear. The people I had loved and looked up to for my entire life now saw me as someone unrecognizable. And yet, despite the heaviness of their disappointment, despite the distance that was now between us, I knew that this path was the only one I could walk. The truth I had discovered wasn't something I could turn away from, no matter the cost. It wasn't something that could be explained or justified to others. It was simply something I had to live, something that had transformed me from the inside out. To embrace this new understanding of God meant rejecting everything I had been taught before, everything that had been a part of my identity up until that point. It meant losing the people I loved, but gaining something far greater. In the midst of all this, I realized that my journey wasn't just about finding truth. It was about walking away from the familiar and embracing the unknown. It was about accepting that, in order to find something real and lasting, I had to release everything that wasn't aligned with that truth. The pain of rejection, the loneliness, the distance from my family, it was all part of the process. And though it was hard, it was also freeing. I wasn't the same person I had been before, and that, I knew, was a blessing. To walk in the light of God's unconditional love, to feel His presence with me, was worth more than anything I had lost. And though I felt the weight of my family's rejection, I also felt a peace that surpassed all understanding. I had lost everything that once defined me, but I had gained a deeper connection to God, a connection that would never be taken away. As I continued on this journey, I knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There would be moments of doubt, moments when the pain of my choices would threaten to overwhelm me. But I also knew that I had found something far more precious than I could have imagined, and that no matter where this path led, I was not walking alone. God's love was with me, guiding me through the storm, and that was enough. Despite the overwhelming pain of being rejected by my family and friends, I slowly came to the realization that this wasn't the end of my journey. It was only the beginning. The ache of losing relationships, the sense of betrayal, and the sorrow of walking away from everything I once knew were heavy burdens to bear. But they also marked a significant turning point in my life. In the midst of all the hurt, I found something more profound, more lasting than anything I had ever known: God's love. It was love without conditions, love that didn't require me to meet certain standards or fit into a box, but love that simply was, a love that was freely given. For the first time, I no longer felt fear or doubt about the path I was walking. Those emotions had once ruled my heart, but they no longer had control over me. God had shown me a love that transcended human limitations, a love that filled me with an unshakable peace. His love was greater than any rejection, greater than any sacrifice I had made. And in that love, I found my true freedom. The fear of being alone, the fear of losing the approval of those closest to me, had all dissolved in the face of that love. I had been set free, not by the acceptance of others, but by the assurance that God was with me, that His love was sufficient to carry me through whatever lay ahead. I didn't know where the road ahead would take me. I didn't have all the answers, and I didn't have a clear picture of what my future would look like. The path was uncertain, and the challenges were yet to unfold. But one thing had become abundantly clear: I was no longer walking alone. God's presence was with me in every step I took, in every moment of doubt and fear. His love was my compass, guiding me through the darkness, showing me the way forward. I felt a peace that surpassed anything I had ever experienced before, a peace that came not from the world around me, but from within, from knowing that I was held in God's loving arms. This new journey, though filled with uncertainty, felt like it was exactly where I was meant to be. It was as if a new chapter had opened in my life, one that I couldn't have foreseen, but that felt right. Deep within my soul, I was no longer bound by the expectations of my family, my friends, or the life I had once lived. I had embraced a truth that was far greater than anything I had known, and I was determined to follow it wherever it led. But the journey wasn't just about me. I knew that I had been given this new understanding, this new life, to share with others. I didn't want to keep it to myself. I wanted to help others who were lost, who were struggling, who felt like they were trapped in the same confusion I had once known. I wanted them to know that God's love was available to them, that it wasn't something they had to earn or prove themselves worthy of, but that it was there, waiting for them to reach out and receive it. I wanted them to know that no matter where they had been, no matter how far they felt from God, His love could find them, heal them, and restore them. In the quiet moments, I often reflected on the life I had left behind. I missed my family, my friends, and the life that once felt so secure. But with every passing day, I felt a deeper sense of peace. The love I had found in God was worth more than anything I had lost. It was a love that filled me in a way that nothing else ever could. And it gave me the strength to continue on this new path. I had found my purpose, and though it wasn't an easy path, it was one that felt true to who I was now. As I continued on this journey, I came to understand that it wasn't just about embracing God's love for myself. It was about sharing that love with the world. I wanted to reach out to others who were struggling, who felt lost or hopeless, and show them that they weren't alone. God's love was available to anyone who sought it. It didn't matter where they were in life or what they had done. God's love had no boundaries, no conditions. It was a love that was unconditional and always available. And so, I began to share my story with others. I began to speak of the truth I had found, not out of a desire to convert or convince, but out of a deep yearning to help others experience the same freedom I had found. I wanted to tell them that no matter how far they felt from God, no matter how broken they were, His love was waiting for them. I wanted them to know that they didn't have to be perfect, that they didn't have to meet any expectations. All they had to do was reach out, seek, and know that they were loved. This journey wasn't about religious rules or rituals. It was about relationship, about knowing that we are deeply loved by a God who sees us, who knows us, and who loves us just as we are. I had found that love, and now I was ready to share it with the world, one person at a time. As I look back on everything that has happened, I realize that I've been given a gift, a new beginning. The past, with all its pain and loss, has led me to this moment. And though I don't know what the future holds, I do know that I am no longer afraid. I am no longer uncertain. God's love has set me free, and that is enough. I may not have all the answers, but I have peace. I have the assurance that I am not alone, that God is with me, and that His love will continue to guide me every step of the way. And that, to me, is the greatest gift of all. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to continue sharing these powerful stories and creating a space for open, heartfelt conversations. Click the notification bell so you're always updated when we post new content. Together, let's explore the unseen, celebrate the miraculous, and inspire one another to live with love, faith, and wonder